Wait. Oh my God, math. Of course. Oh, of course. That's the connection. Oh God, I had no idea. Maybe there's hope here after all. I have never needed a drink more than this moment in my entire life.
Absolution Fest had only just begun, and I was already feeling the mounting anxiety and all of the tingling sensations I know are the sign of a panic attack mounting.
Okay. 5 things I can see. Right. This is a method to bring a panic attack down. That's right.
As Violet's silhouette continued to set up, I realized that they hadn't even started playing and I was already feeling shaky.
Well, the band is setting up, but that's the band that triggered me. So, what else do we have here? A lot of goths. That's not specific enough. Wait, 4 things I can... What now?
When a 5-4-3-2-1 method or something similar isn't working, sometimes I need to mind the gap between the panic and the typical working solution. Sometimes it's just a matter of arriving at a slower breath in any way possible. So when the lead walked onto the stage, I had stopped dead in my tracks for a moment. Not because he did anything other than walk onto the stage, but because he was like a haunting doppelganger for someone I'd rather forget. Someone most people who know me also want to forget. But another corner of this is that any representation of that guy is negative, and therefore, what's the doppelganger? Or is it just the same demon showing up in many different faces throughout your life? I think we know the answer to that. I turned inward to piece through why I would feel that way in that moment when the memory is decades old. So I thought my pensive moment was much longer than it actually was, but I made a decision. Go harder. I decided to move forward, to go deeper into the envelopment of the sound. I wanted to be well by the next set, which was KANGA. I think it's important to know that I spent most of 2023 trying to get back into live music and developing a pattern that would provide the result and the routine I felt comfortable with and the variation I needed to maintain my dopamine stash. I buy the tickets, make the schedule, and show up alone to play with the photography functions on my phone. It's a great strategy when your ADHD and your autistic traits decide to hate each other. I noticed that the lead was testing things and setting up, so I decided it was time to consider what I call panic math, which is where I talk myself into recognizing that I'm actually safe by playing a strange version of I Spy, where you ground yourself first by first noticing your surroundings, then noting what's different about the memory. This is different from 5-4-3-2-1 for those of you who are familiar with it. It's different in that I have added an extra layer where then I am now differentiating from another moment in the past. So this person in question, the one that I called that guy, remember, he wasn't a musician and he's now in his 50s. Provided he's alive, and he certainly cannot sing. If this was an X or a Bad Brains show, it would have been more difficult to play this game. Plus, I was 48 at that time and not 18. I shuffled a little and then looked down and thought,
well, for starters, this floor would taste vastly different than any I've ever tasted before.
I get it. It's weird. If you recall, I'd hit the floor at Florida State University when I recognized that 2 images on a board of 2 different men could very well be one man, and that one man could be that guy. I don't know that it's true, But what was becoming very clear that night in Crowbar was that was the first time I'd ever tasted a floor. To my mind, before then, my panic attacks had sort of crystallized in 2016 into something that I can now recognize as severe panic disorder. But it occurred to me that night in Crowbar, I thought, wait. The first time I ever tasted a floor was because of that guy, even if it wasn't in the immediate moments after what happened to me that night. It was still that guy. But wouldn't you like to learn about panic math? Eating the floor, panic math. So let me ask you, have you ever had a panic attack? A real panic attack? I mean, have you experienced the kind of panic attack that arrives after countless anxiety attacks that you thought were panic attacks? Most of us have seen media representations of panic attacks and not been aware of what it feels like to eat the floor. And that's what I remember from the first panic attack I didn't know was a panic attack at that time because I thought I was dying. My mouth to the floor of our kitchen and strange waves rippling through my head that made me think it was a seizure. Like a fish out of water and nom-nom-nomming on dirt. And it was a reflection of something terrible that happened to me. The thing is, you can go through your entire life in therapy, read books and more books, do an entire specialty in critical theory that includes psychoanalytics, even study under some cool people in the field, and yet you're still eating the floor. And I realized that I felt a little bit angry in this moment. But that's when I called upon this other thing, panic math. Panic math for me starts with the 5-4-3-2-1 approach. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, and etc. Perfect in live music when you work with aesthetic. But if any of these methods have failed for you and you can't seem to find anything other than medication, you might just need more numbers in the equation. So I found that these methods didn't work because I needed more numbers in the equation. Mine works like this: 5-4-3-2-1 plus what's different now multiplied by talking back to my brain divided by verbal communication with a safe person who might not know what I'm doing equals still room for dinner. It plays out like this. I spy this starts with a man who looks like that guy, but with a guitar and he's singing. I can hear loud music, not the nocturnal sounds of a summer night in Florida. I have never been in this room before, and it's not a dangerous room, and someone would come to my aid here. I spy a 48-year-old woman standing in a room of people who don't know what she's doing inside her head. Oh, that's me. Maybe I should return to my body. But the question is, what did he do? What could be so bad that a mere similarity at Absolution Fest almost 30 years after that hellish night, what was so bad that it would serve me a dirty floor for din-din? I didn't even develop panic disorder until 2016, and the night in question was in 1994. Well, it was awful. It does no good to downplay something that should never be downplayed, and yet I still shrink from the memory, but I have to go there, to the past. As time went by, when I met that guy. Violet Silhouette started to play, and it was like something walloped me in the side of the head. I was 18 when I met that guy at a literary magazine meeting of editors. I don't remember the day I met him because I am almost never impressed by anyone upon meeting them. I'm notorious for confusing the hell out of people with my complete lack of initial attraction in any category and in any way. It's a fact of my life. I don't care what anyone has ever thought about your desirability because that shit doesn't impact my desire. In fact, when I start to feel like you're jockeying for wide-scale attention, especially if it would be at my expense, just, ew, the ick. No judgment if you're not pursuing me, though. When I met that guy in 1993, it was obviously before popular conversations around demisexuality, and even then, I don't adhere to demisexuality beyond the time it takes for attraction to arrive, though there are 0 half measures after that. This is a hilariously confusing aspect of my existence, at least for other people. That guy was used to women responding to him immediately, and I just didn't. I think by the time there was any response from me, he likely hated me in some way. By the fateful night I went to his apartment to end things in August of 1994, he had tried every method possible, but I was not interested. So many men who want to fuck women don't even like women, especially when they're jealous of the women they're with. Imagine your life if you just decided that being loved is enough. Maybe if you didn't need to feed your ego. So many women would not be chewed up by you and your ego. The lead of Valet Silhouette was only on the stage for a few moments before starting in earnest, then began walking all around the stage with his guitar, with a testing things but also playing an opening riff vibe, and I was about to take video and still process as I reflected back on the night I ate dirt. Yes, that's what I call that night, the night I ate dirt. It's not that I was over the memory. It's more that I was able to get metacognitive and think about why there and then at Crowbar, but I know the answer to that now. I know that my relationships were damaging and damaged, so I knew I'd have to let myself be the villain in some stories and the victim in others. And as I mentioned in the first Absolution piece, I'd walked into a center in July of 2022 and stepped out at the end of August with no need for a wheelchair and a stark realization that I hadn't been an open book at all. I thought I had been. I thought I'd been somebody who shared everything. And I believe other people believed that because it seems like it when there's so much all the time. It was more like a summary of a sprawling podcast of an 11-year battle where the topics are disturbing and the metaphors are too mixed. Oh, that's right. That is a different podcast. One of mine. In there, you have to ride your panic attacks out, and when you do, you go so much farther into your head. It's like getting the poison out. You learn how to do the work when you can't talk to anyone on the outside they deem destructive to your well-being. It was in the center that I'd realized how many times I'd allowed partners to be awful to me, and some circumstances where I had been awful myself without fully realizing it. But the night I ate dirt was still one of the most replayed scenes in my entire life. I knew I had to come to terms with that night before I could go to the history that caused me to be there in that apartment complex in the first place. The music would kind of provide the soundtrack for my memory, a strange music video in my head. Maybe the worst kinds. Maybe it's horror. Well, actually, it's true crime. I remembered the terror I felt that night. I remembered what it felt like to really let go of my body out of necessity. And that's when I realized.
There's a feeling on my cheek. What is this feeling on my cheek? Is somebody running the air conditioning? No. Is somebody walking fast around me? No. What is that feeling?
Valdez goes feral and then KANGA. You can use a beat to take yourself out of your pain, out of your head, and back into the physical world of other humans who are experiencing that beat. It's pretty essential to the BeepBoop experience, at least to my mind. I work so many things out to the BeepBoop sounds. It doesn't have to be deep, but for me, what I'm thinking about very much is it's church for me. It was strange for me in that moment, strange, because he looked like that guy and even moved like him a little, but was clearly nothing at all like him. It's kind of like people might differentiate themselves for us if we just hang out with our discomfort long enough to allow that to unfold. And I'd never listened to Violet Silhouette before, so hearing them live that night was like hitting play and the live performance pops out instead. It's dope, right? So when he started building up to a state of feral, lost in the music, I was delighted, and it helped me think about the night I ate dirt in a slightly different way. So a quality of the lead's voice is the way that he uses his bravado live, or at least the way he did that night live, is this kind of sensation or this sound of someone singing underwater. Right? It's kind of hard to describe it in any other way but that, okay? But also, like, while he's doing that, there is this particular way of moving around the stage, and it all feels very 80s. We're down with that in the goth world. This is not this is not a surprise. It's not a surprise per se. But it does have this interesting quality where it's like the vocals are serious, the vocalization is very sort of underwater, and it has that 80s way of an 80s way of almost talking through a song. But he also has this way of doing these little jumps. I don't know how to describe it. You're gonna have to go to my Instagram, where I'm gonna post, some videos this week of the band. You're going to have to go see that. You're going to have to go see those videos to understand what I mean. And you might also understand what I mean when I'm talking about like a certain 90s casual look that he definitely has. He's definitely rocking that night in particular. And then another clip I got that night was when Valdez actually sort of went feral on stage. The reason I'm saying went feral is it's not my term. I think it was what Mark Paradise said on his, when he posted that night. And if you're thinking to yourself, you remember what somebody else posted the night of this set. And I'm like, yes, I do. And I do remember like seeing, I'm pretty sure it was Mark, but somebody saying, going feral, and then thinking that was right, because he really did have this way of letting go on stage. And I think the clip I got is one where he is like sort of thrashing his head about, and I, when I look at that clip, I'm like, that's why I will never be able to sing live. Not just my panic disorder, but the fact that I don't think that I'm able to cut loose in that way. Maybe that's why I'm a writer instead. But I would say, if they ever tour and they're playing in your area, then you should go see that. I can't promise that it's going to go feral, right? Can't promise that, but maybe it's always a possibility. Okay, so fun fact. For some reason, I just paused and I went to look up to see. I wanted to make sure, is this band even still together? I just want to make sure. So I went over and I looked, and they are actually playing on the same night as Hispanic Band and Disexual at New World Tampa on June 13th. And so I'm obviously up here. I'm not down there. But, why not? That is an excellent lineup. That is an excellent lineup, and I'm low-key mad. I'm not going to be at it, but it is what it is. So if you're in Florida, then definitely go catch that lineup for sure. Anywho, back to the episode. Violet Silhouette began to end their set, and I realized that KANGA was coming out soon, so I paused to talk back to my brain and say,
hey, you aren't your old version of you. But then also, feeling compassion for 18-year-old you doesn't have to mean you're ashamed of her.
Ouch. And that's when...
What is this feeling that's on my cheek? Is this wind?
The band ended their set and folks began moving about to get a drink or a better spot because KANGA was next. I was really looking forward to seeing her, and I was pretty happy in that moment again. So as KANGA was preparing to come out, I just geared up to think about that night and begin to panic math again. The night I ate dirt. Let me get you started. Let me just click play and just let you imagine. Imagine this. I'm 18, almost 19. I'm very skinny because I wasn't eating much, but I was pretty and overall a sweet girl. I kept trying to tell people what was in my past, but it never felt like someone was listening. I never felt heard or even seen beyond the exhausting male gaze, which that guy capitalized on, I assure you. To say that I was vulnerable would be barely scratching the surface of my experiences. But even when you think about how bad something is, it takes distance and age to see it all for what it was. I was totally confused on that night in August of 1994 as to how and why I'd found myself in a weird dating scenario with that guy in the first place. And the thing that sucks to let slip through my fingers is that he taught me much of what makes my sexual attraction anything special enough to keep it. And it takes ages to learn it all. You probably don't have the patience for this, but if you do, well, I think most people in our subcultures understand that your proclivities come from complex experiences that some think are suspect, but we own it. And yet, I'm aware that my response to the juxtaposition of KANGA's vibe and my memory initiating something about my need for a sex life was not a mistake. People wrongly assume their histories of desirability are going to be some kind of deciding factor, when the reality is that my brain doesn't care about who else wants you whatsoever. I develop interest in someone and then realize they're hot later. But unlike the rest of people who identify as demisexual, I then switch into overdrive. I was 18. He was 27 going on 28. It's gross. It's worse. He exploited the fact that I was hungry. Sit with that, please. I was hungry. I had been very, very confused about the traumatic end of my first real relationship, which didn't help that guy's feelings. I'd just been to a hangout at a friend's house where I'd seen my first love. I was still angry at him, but that was the only house that night where I felt safe. I left and headed over to that guy's because I wasn't thinking concert tickets were a reason not to end it. And that's where we get to the point of how these things connect. When I tell you that guy had 2 tickets to see Tori Amos's Under the Pink tour, have a moment of silence where we all wince because maybe I could have waited a few days. Hey, I have to deal with this in my own way, but I also know I'm not alone in my weird prioritizing of music and history. I'm just saying. And the fact that I missed a historic tour of quite possibly the most important artist informing my entire life is the kind of thing that matters to me, whether you think it's justified or it isn't. It still stings. Tori Amos, in that moment of our lives, was the embodiment of our rage, our confusion, our pain, the way everything felt like it was cutting us open all the time. And the fact that I had tickets to see her, and that the reason I didn't see her was because of this incident still eats me up. And I wager if you're here and you love live music, then maybe this isn't such a stretch for you. And while that night started out with relatively little drama, I could not see the path ahead was going to land where it did. But I did know that I knew we had concert tickets to see Tori Amos, and one of those was supposed to be for me. But I also knew that night that things were just not right, and that allowing myself to sit on it to go to the concert was just a really awful, selfish thing to do. I went to his apartment late, and his mother let me in. She was sweet and often told me things about her son that weighed on her, so she understood why the scenario was what it was better than I did. She let me in, and I walked back to that guy's bedroom where the room was dark, but it seems like he was still awake. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something like, "I can't see you anymore," or "We have to end this." In a very serious tone, he said, "I think you should leave now." Standing in Crowbar, it was like I could recall the sound in my ear. I could hear the memory of that guy saying that line, and my brain suddenly handed me the visualization of that guy in the dark of his bedroom with just moonlight behind him as he sat up.
Hey, do you want a drink?
I was taken out of the memory and back to the present by Mad Girl 1. She couldn't have known what she'd done. And fuck yeah, I did, but I wasn't going to drag Mad Girls 1 or 2 into my awful memory. It's a special motivation to put your drama away when you love your people. Heading into KANGA's set, I thought to myself,
Wait a minute. Matt, of course, that's the connection. Oh, God, I had no idea. Oh, this is good connection. This is a good connection. Maybe there's hope here after all. I have never needed a drink more than this moment in my entire life.